Good morning. Thank you and welcome to the Best Starts for Kids, Youth and Family Homelessness Prevention Initiative, RFP information session. So you either got this invitation from myself or from one of your colleagues or off of the Best Starts for Kids blog. We are very excited that you're here with us today. What I can say for myself and my team is we are even more excited that the Best Starts for Kids levy was renewed and that we have this wonderful opportunity to continue on with this program for the next 6 years. It's been an amazing program. Today, I'll share a couple of highlights with you from the program and give you some idea of what we're looking for in our funding partners for the next iteration of youth and family homelessness prevention and the timeline of when the RFP will be released. There will be opportunities for you to ask questions. I haven't muted you all. If you will all be sensitive though and keep yourself muted until the time that you would like to ask a question, that would be super helpful. So again, welcome today. Super excited to have you here. I would typically have my entire team here today. We are dealing with illness, just like many of you are dealing with within your organization. So thank you for having grace for me today to be doing this on my own and to be distracted, as I've said, to let people into the meeting. I want to introduce my team to you though, because this is just, a team-based program. So in partnership, my teammates on this program are Stan Brownlow, Keyshawn Cipio, and joining us on the 31st this month, and we couldn't be more excited about that, is Ramika Toms. Ramika has been with King County for several years now as a confidential secretary and is super excited to learn more about the contracting processes and has a deep and wide passion for homelessness prevention. So we could not be more thrilled that she is joining our team at the end of the month. And just so you know, we work as a team. And the reason I'm introducing my team is this is a unique program. Oftentimes the county will send out an RFP looking for a service within a program that your organization already runs. So your program might do homelessness prevention services, and you might have your own model and methodology for how you do it. And it would seem like, oh, okay, they just want us to do homelessness prevention. The unique thing about youth and family homelessness prevention is that this is a program designed, built, implemented, and supported by King County staff, by the team that you see here. What does that mean? That means we provide all the training, we provide the case management support, we provide all the technical assistance. It really is a King County program. We also provide all the analysis of the program. This program is in a continuous state of improvement because of the data analysis. What that offers us is the ability to flex the program as we need to based on what we see in data. So it is a little bit different. And because of that, your team here, the King County team, is really valuable and an asset to all of you. We are all cross-trained. There is no hierarchy within our team. We all work as one team, and the goal in that is to best support you. So you're all here today because you are interested potentially in applying for funding under Best Starts for Kids, which is the global umbrella. Specifically, this meeting today is about the Youth and Family Homelessness Prevention Initiative. So I wanted to start this by saying who should apply for funding, because you're all wondering, are we a good fit? Should we apply for funding? So let me tell you who we are really looking for when we go out with and release this RFP. Let me say I've said the acronym RFP several times now, request for proposals. So when we go out with this RFP, we are really looking for organizations that are community-led, that are in bed within communities, that are very well positioned to serve the households and create positive impacts for children, youth, and family in their communities. YFHPI is a value statement in that we work in partnership with partners, a little bit of a double dip there on that word. But our partners should be very committed to equity and social justice. So that'll be a big component of your RFP and questions surrounding that. about what is your commitment to equity and social justice and anti-racism. Every YFHPI partner must provide services to households from a place of dignity and respect. This is critical to the work that we do, especially around prevention. We want equity and social justice to be the cornerstone of your work, while we empower families to embrace their unique strengths for long-term housing stability. Our partners support us in believing that youth are more successful. We are under best starts for kids when they live in stable housing. So we support through this program youth and households who are at imminent risk of losing their housing. So I'm going to repeat that several times throughout this presentation because so many people are at risk of losing their housing. Imminent risk is a confusing element to a lot of people. This program targets households at imminent risk. And so as I go throughout this, I want people to learn about that, begin to understand it, because what happens in this program is you have to say no to households seeking eligibility more often than you say yes. And that is because everybody that will come to you seeking support will have risk. They will all have risk. They will have trauma, sadness, passion for how at risk they are. But the truth is, imminent risk is without intervention, they will be homeless. So there'll be more about that as we go throughout this presentation, but I just want to pique your curiosity about that, get you thinking about that, because that is the uniqueness about this program, and it's a challenge. So I want you to understand the challenge up front. As you are a multi-ethnic, multicultural organization, or you are deeply embedded within your community, how would it feel for us to have a contract where we said no to people more often than we said yes? So just think about that. YFHPI providers must be able to demonstrate and understand how racism worsens disparities in our community. So we're going to be asking a lot of questions about that because it's critical. And we have seen that throughout COVID. We have seen the impacts for our BIPOC community members. You have to understand that it's multi-layered. So we want agencies that understand this. Most do, but you'll be asked to explain that throughout the application process. So I'm going to give you some background, and this is a really boring part of the presentation in the manner that it's a little technical. So I just want to be transparent about that. So when I give you the YFHPI background, this is a program that was designed by a body of people back in 2015, 2016, and our council through ordinance created the Youth and Family Homelessness Prevention Initiative. It's important for me to preface it's by ordinance because it's a part of our programmatic requirements under Best Starts for Kids, that this program actually exists and is operated. It also, as you go throughout here, you'll see that there's more accountability for this program because it was created and designed by ordinance. So I do want to read out loud what council identified this program to be and how they defined it in its origin back in 2016. So council's directive was that Youth and Family Homelessness Prevention Initiative means an initiative intended to prevent and divert children and youth and their families from becoming homeless. It is the intent of the council and the executive that funding for the Youth and Family Homelessness Prevention Initiative will allow the initiative to be flexible, client-centered, and outcomes-focused. Those two words are super important as we go throughout this, and will provide financial support for community agencies to assist clients. So when it was designed originally off of Washington State Coalition Against Domestic Violence. We call it WSCDIV's DV initiative, because at that time, DV was seen as one of the leading causes of homelessness. It is still, so I don't want to discount that. But we were built off of that format. It was a really successful program that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation originated. It was wildly successful. It was one of the first really successful homelessness prevention programs in our community and in our county. So we launched Youth and Family Homelessness Prevention Initiative off of that model to begin with, but it didn't take us long. Remember, this is an evidence-based program. We are in a constant state of improvement, analyzing data all of the time on this program. And it didn't take us long before we realized that not all households are impacted by domestic violence. And there are a lot of households that just have imminent risk based on disabilities, language barriers, whether they're new to our country, coming in as immigrants and refugees. And because we expanded the reach outside of domestic violence to who we would serve, we saw pretty early on that we needed to make some adjustments. So for the last 5 years, we have made several adjustments, and we would say now that this is not a program designed directly off of that, but it's a program that has developed over time. Youth and family homelessness prevention, they said, can serve people at risk of homelessness, but not currently homeless households. So I wanted to bring that out because that is in the ordinance, but it goes on further down to say at imminent risk of homelessness. And what this particular section was speaking to was you cannot use this money to supplant other funds that should go for people that are in the homeless system. So this one little area was confusing, wanted to bring it up unless you're all looking at and researching what youth and family homelessness prevention was built off of. Council said that there must be case management and advocacy to households, and that we would use the progressive engagement model for case management. We still do that today. That we must be able to offer flexible funding to households in order to navigate past the current financial crisis that is putting them at that imminent risk. That services needed to be culturally appropriate. Back when this program was designed in 2016, agencies were asked to split funds 50-50, with half of the dollars going to case managers and the other half going to flexible funds. That will not be the case for YFHPI 2.0. So that is one of the big changes we'll be making. But this is the big thing here: extensive training, ongoing learning circles, and a rigorous evaluation will be part of the program design. That is absolutely true. That will continue to be true as we move into YFHPI 2.0, we actually call it. So all bidders will receive training. You are continuously trained by our program and our team. And that we also offer training to organizations to build capacity. So if you're a brand new program, you're a brand new agency, and you're like, oh my gosh, we've never received a government contract before. We had 8 organizations that had never received a government contract before. Most are multi-million-dollar contracted agencies now. We used the capacity building that was available through Best Starts for Kids and our team dynamics to build that capacity, and now they're great organizations, several of which are on the call today. So we don't want you to think, oh gosh, we're so small, don't know if we could be successful. We want to tell you that time tells us something different, and some of our most successful organizations were in fact small as well. So who is eligible? And this is speaking about who as a client is eligible. So it is a program designed for youth ages 24 and under that may be living independently or on their own, or families that have youth ages 24 and under. So if you are an organization or you're a project type program organization that serves single males, unless their age is 24 and under, they wouldn't be eligible for services under this program. This is a Best Starts for Kids program, and the design is to support youth and households with youth. So that's super important to understand. We do use not necessarily a common intake form. Council said we needed to use an intake form. It didn't really make sense over time that we would use an intake form. A lot of organizations had their own kind of intake processes. What we do use is a vulnerability tool. So all households that are seeking services under youth and family homelessness prevention, YFHPI, are evaluated for their vulnerability using an assessment tool. We will continue to use that. And again, that we were to provide learning circles for agencies as part of the program. Learning circles are the cornerstone of our program. Back in the day before COVID, we met every single month, all organizations. And I will tell you that 25 organizations with their staff became family. This did become one uniform program, close relationships built out of this program. It's been a little bit harder since we can't meet in person to do this, but that has been a cornerstone of our program and will continue to be in the second iteration of youth and family homelessness prevention. So I touched lightly on that this program doesn't serve everyone. That is the hardest part of this. It was the hardest part for case managers. It's going to be the hardest part when you really critically evaluate, is this a good fit for our agency? Again, if we have to say no to a lot of people, how does that impact us from a cultural perspective? If we have to say no. So you really need to think about this, because it is a challenging program in that it is targeted to serve a specific group of people that are at a high level of vulnerability. So we can't serve all households. So we early on started to reflect that there are different lanes in the prevention system. So prevention is a part. YFHPI is a component of a system. So the first layer is what we call rental assistance, and that's for people that have risk. They do have risk. They have a 14-day pay or vacate notice. We all know those are starting to roll out again. The household may, on that vulnerability assessment, be very low risk, meaning they haven't had a history of homelessness or evictions, or, you know, they've just recently lost a job. Maybe they have their job again, but they're really just behind in rent. And what we used to say, because we use kind of the road and the car analogy, is that they've hit a bump in the road. And all of us hit bumps in the roads. Some of us are impacted financially by that. Some of us have risk with our housing because of that. Excuse me. So this first lane of what we would call a 4-lane highway is really for rental assistance. This program has not historically provided rental assistance. In fact, we would say you can't provide rental assistance. So in a world where EPRAP, eviction prevention rental assistance, has been paying a lot of rental assistance, people are behind in rent, I just need rental assistance, that is not the cornerstone of this program. Eviction prevention. Eviction prevention is kind of that next step on the highway towards the fast lane, where it's getting worse. Like, you're not behind them right now. Now you're actually impacted by the court system, and you have a higher level of risk of becoming homeless if you don't address it. That the household may have some other complexities too, such as their rent burden. Rent burden is a really difficult challenge for households, but that they do have some support systems. That if the eviction were prevented, they would be okay. Kind of like that first group, if their rent were paid, they would be okay. The second group is if their eviction were stopped, they would be okay. Again, you kind of feel the tension here of, wow, that's rough, right? We should be able to help them, but they weren't who this program was designed for. So homelessness prevention is without an intervention now, without support that may in fact be long-term support, and historically is, this household will become homeless. That they lack support systems. They have multiple high barriers. So they're behind in rent, they're in the court system now, they don't have a job, they have children with disabilities in the household, so it's super hard for mom to work. There are so many complex issues going on that preventing that eviction or paying that rent is just not going to, it's not going to do it. You may have to do those as well, right, to prevent the homelessness, but there's a lot more going on. So you're going to have to really work with the household to create what the design of this program is intended for, long-term housing stability. And then there's a piece of, sometimes you're working with a family and it is so complicated and they really need a housing voucher. They really, because of income limitations, will never be able to afford, you know, the average cost of an apartment in our community. Those households may actually need to enter into the homeless system. Really hard for case managers, but sometimes that homeless system is the best resource for them. And so we may encourage households to actually go into a homeless housing situation where they could get into transitional housing or rapid rehousing. But at this point, we identify, okay, they are not a good fit for our program either. Sometimes they come to us from the homeless system and they say, can you just help me get into an apartment? Again, they're currently homeless, and the design of homelessness prevention is to prevent homelessness. All of our efforts are to keep that household in their housing, or to ensure that they have a roof over their head, with long-term supports that create long-term housing stability. I think I have one more slide, and then I'm going to take a little pause so that people can ask questions, because I recognize I'm giving a lot of information. So this is the model. This is the model we used all throughout training. We'll continue to use this. And you can kind of see the visuals sometimes help. You know, a lot of people are going to come in with risk, and they're going to say, I'm losing my housing, I'm going to become homeless. But the truth is, if we just took care of the one issue that is their barrier right now, they would be okay. They're actually more stable than they realize. They're going through trauma, they're scared, but they're actually in pretty good shape. Then we have people that are unstable. They've got some vulnerabilities. They've just lost their job. They're behind in rent for the first time. There's a little bit more vulnerability going on, but we would just say you're unstable right now. You've had stability. You've never been homeless. You've never been evicted. Yes, you are unstable right now, and that's a really scary place to be. We would provide them with resources, referrals to other services. Then you have the ones that are kind of getting up the cliff a little bit. They're at risk. There's some stuff going on there, right? They're court impacted. They're behind in rent. They may have other mitigating factors going on in the household, but they're really not quite there at that point where they've got 1 foot off the cliff. And who we serve in this program is the 1 foot off the cliff group. So we serve the hardest of the hardest, those at the highest risk with the highest levels of vulnerabilities in this program. It's not what everybody imagines homelessness prevention to be. It is a targeted program that is data-driven, heavily analyzed, and I'll share a little bit more about that, but it is a very unique program. So having said all of this, do you have questions? We'll take a brief break, and I have a lot more to share with you. And please unmute yourself or raise your hand if you have questions, and we'll work on this. Emily.
Hi, I had one question. You had mentioned involvement in the court system, and I was wondering if civil legal aid would be considered for application for this RFP.
So would a civil legal aid organization that provides civil legal aid be a strong applicant to apply for the RFP process? Is that the question?
Correct. Yes, thank you.
I cannot make recommendations in this presentation for anybody to say you would or you would not be a good candidate for it. If you're still interested after you hear this, I would wait when the RFP is released, and I would look at the nuances of the RFP and make that determination on your own. We have had all kinds of people be really successful in this work. So it would be, it would not be prudent of us to make a recommendation of, yeah, no, you would be a good fit, might be the best fit. So we are that open in this process. I know that's not what we're hoping for, but.
No, that's super helpful. Thank you.
I won't discourage anybody. Cole.
Hi. So I will tell you first off, I already know that with our case managers, it's going to be really difficult for them to say no. So I'm wondering, can we use funds to like weave into existing programs? So as an example, we do an intake, a family comes in and we say, okay, I'm sorry, you're not eligible for this bucket of money that we have in this program, but we are going to defer you over to systems X, Y, and Z that we have in place. That is something that we can write the proposal around that's going to be woven into existing programs.
Most of our programs, in fact, do that. So most of
perfect.
Do have other pools of money or resources. The challenge with this is that the case manager working on this program has to be solely dedicated to the work of this program. and can't be supporting other programs within your organization.
Okay, so then the case
would be
manager
a-
they take into they would be like, I'm going to hand you over to another case manager. Perfect. Thank you.
Yep, yep. Great question. And I don't want to botch anybody's name on here, so I just apologize. I see Kabram.
Yes,
Did I do that right?
that's right. Yeah, perfect.
Oh, great. Thank you. How can I assist?
Yeah, hi. The picture you used to describe the difference between unstable at risk and imminent risk is very descriptive. It's very helpful. But my question is, when we actually go out there, work with families, sometimes it may be very, confusing to make a differentiation between families who are at risk and at imminent risk, unless we have some kind of parameter or some kind of, I don't know, scale or a criteria to make this differentiation. Is there any instrument that we can use on your side to actually differentiate between families who are at risk and at imminent risk?
Right, so you will be asked to put all applicants for this program through an assessment called the vulnerability assessment for homelessness.
Okay.
So there is a tool that is used, and then, the higher the acuity, or, a household scoring 25 on that assessment is at much higher risk than a household that scores 13. And then we have minimum thresholds for the program too. So a household has to score within a certain range in order to be eligible.
All right. Thank you.
Mhm. And Emily and Kabram, your hands are still up. I can take your hands down for you.
I will put my hand down.
Okay, and
Oh,
if
I bring
any-
it back. There you go.
See, any other questions? Does anybody else have a question? All right. So I'm going to go on to the next component of this, which is, why is this program like so kind of constrained? And the reason is that there's a need for this program. So we do have rental assistance out in the community. We do have some eviction prevention out in the community. What we didn't have back in 2016 was a program that really offered intensive case management support. And we also didn't have a program that was going to go over the rigorousness of the evaluation that we were required to go through. So council required the Youth and Family Homelessness Prevention Initiative to go through what is called a randomized control trial. It is one of the highest kind of benchmarks of evaluation. We did that. We worked in partnership with Notre Dame for about 3.5 years to evaluate this program. We did a randomized control trial. It's called the gold standard of evaluation. Our funded contractors were required to go through this with us. And so when we look at what might we do differently, how do we do things differently, some of the shifts now for YFHPI 2.0 will be guided and driven by the results of this randomized control trial. And then we have, this program is continuously monitored using data within our own internal performance measurement evaluation team. So we have a team here at King County that is constantly and consistently looking at data for this program, and we make adjustments based on that overall. Why are we doing all this? Why did they say you have to do this? Gosh, we've had other King County contracts. I've never heard of this before. The truth of this is there are not a lot of evidence-based homelessness prevention programs out there in the United States. There are a lot of people that conjecture that you can't actually prove to me that I prevented homelessness for that family. They were never going to become homeless to begin with. That is what this program bumps up against all the time, is the fact that you can't actually prove that they would have become homeless. We're getting pretty close to where we think we can argue that effectively, that we could prove that they would have become homeless. But again, it's that constant and continuous analysis of data of the households that we're serving. So this program will continue to operate in that model where we are continuously evaluated. We do not anticipate having to go through a randomized control trial through YFHPI 2.0, but the results of that randomized control trial absolutely are driving and informing some of the adjustments we'll make. Excuse me. So what are some of the things that we're measuring? So outcomes measurement, what is the outcome? What are we driving towards in this program? We're driving towards ensuring people don't become homeless. Are we always successful? No. And in fact, from that earlier slide, I had proposed to you that some of the households we're dealing with actually are better served going into the homeless system. You're like, how can that possibly be? It is because some households will never be able to stabilize on their own based on household composition, disabilities within the families that limit income opportunities. There are all kinds of things that may prevent a family. We've got a lot more grandparents now that are providing support for kiddos, and 80 years old, they're not able to go back into the workforce. So we've got some real serious limitations for some households as to whether or not they can improve upon their incomes. Some of those households really are better served when they can get connected to a housing voucher, supported by transitional housing or rapid rehousing. But the goal of this program is when you have a household that you're working with that is housed, how can we support them to maintain and sustain that housing over time? So the number one outcome for us is that our households don't end up homeless with our services. We also look at what we have flexible funds. What are the types of things that people need in order to really attain and sustain housing stability? And so we evaluate that. We look at the different areas where we dedicate financial resources to, and are the outcomes for those households when we go kind of off in a certain direction and look at different things, and say, so if we put somebody in a motel to begin with and we move them into housing, how do they do over time? That was a really kind of odd example I gave you, but those are kind of things we looked at earlier on. So we evaluate throughout this program, where we're dedicating resources. Is that the right place and the right things to dedicate resources to? Because we are invested in learning about prevention in an overall global effort to really better understand what it takes to prevent homelessness, we do make awards for our program, typically longer. So when you are funded, you are typically funded for a longer period of time. In YFHPI 1.0, we funded all agencies throughout the duration of the levy. In this iteration, we will not commit to that straight out. We will commit to funding under our annual, under our budgeting process, which is a biennial budgeting process. So we will make a commitment to do that. Our goals and objectives are if the agency is doing well, they are performing well, their outcomes are great, they are really working well with the families and staying connected to them, that there is low case manager turnover. We're going to look at different things this time around, but it is possible that an agency that receives an award under this RFP could be awarded throughout the duration of the levy. So that would be 2022 through 2027. One of the things that we have required very firmly in this program is that all agencies must use our prevention database to enter all client level services. We are probably going to shift to HMIS in iteration 2.0, regardless of which system we end up utilizing. All households will have to have their data entered into the database. So that is a requirement. That is how we track data. That's how we learn from this program. So again, how will success be measured that the households don't show up in HMIS? So we always, even though we put all our data into the prevention database, we were able to then ping that data against HMIS to see if the household did in fact become homeless. That we will also be looking at global analytics. So overall for our community, are we seeing a reduction in the number of youth and families that are newly homeless? We were successful in that in YFHPI. One of the things that they said is that the Children's Youth Advisory Board wanted us to evaluate another factor, at least one other factor. We evaluated about 4 other factors. We evaluated overall global health outcomes for households that were served in this program, incarceration rates, education successes, and I'll come back to you with the 4th one, but we did evaluate other factors as well in this program. And then in the first iteration, we were required to obtain philanthropic funding. So we did apply for a grant, costs about $1 million to do a randomized control trial. We were very lucky and fortunate that we did procure a grant for that through the JPEL organization that then supported our work with Notre Dame to do the evaluation. We don't have to do that in this iteration. So that is a change in this program. Again, I've kind of talked about this. So I'm not going to get into great detail about this. We did do a randomized control trial. It began in May of 2018. We had 600 households, and a randomized control trial is you have a family come in, they are qualified for the program through the vulnerability assessment. You say to them, you are afforded the opportunity to participate in this randomized control trial. If you choose to participate, you will be randomly selected. The computer generated the selection to either receive just rent assistance, meaning we're going to pay your past due debt today, but then you're done. You don't get any case management services. Or even if you're coming here today hoping that we're just going to pay your rent, if you're randomized into the case management program, you will receive case management services with the possibility of flexible funding. Case managers about 20% of the time were effective in never having to support with financial support. So it wasn't always a guarantee that you were getting financial support. So that's what the randomized control trial looked at, 600 participants that either received financial assistance or the case management with financial assistance. Overall outcomes for our program is that our program kept households housed 12 months past exit at the rates of 90 to 96% over the course of the levy. It was a very successful program. Again, lots of adjustments, lots of analysis, lots of shifts for our providers that are here on this meeting with us. They would attest, oh yeah, things were changing a lot, especially in the beginning, but that was all in an effort to do continuous improvement. Okay, that was like a random section of this. There was a lot about evaluation. Any questions about that? I just want to pause here. I didn't think there would be questions, but I want to afford the opportunity. Okay, so what did we learn? What did we learn from this program, and where are we going in the next RFP? So we learned the program works. We learned the model works. We were able to successfully prevent homelessness for the majority of our households. In the first iteration, we provided case management up front, and the possibility of flexible funds was there, but it was at case manager kind of discretion. Well, that will maintain its truth in this program. We are going to train case managers to resolve the financial crisis first. So instead of working with the household to find out what they can do, where they can pitch in, where they have some additional support systems, friends, family, we will actually be working to resolve the financial crisis up front, because the data from the randomized control trial told us we needed to make that shift. So that is a shift we will be making. The other thing that we learned from the randomized control trial is some households do just need rent assistance, that they would come in with high vulnerabilities. They would come in with very high risk scores. We would work with them. They would get their past due debt paid or the eviction corrected, support within the court system, and then they drop off the face of the earth. They didn't want anything more to do with managers. They were, it was a challenge to get them to work with our case managers and cooperate. However, looking at them, a certain percentage of those households really did do very well. And in the randomized control trial, we had some really successful results with people that came in and were randomized just to get rent assistance. Knowing that, the evaluation has shown us that we need to have 2 phases of the program. So we do need to have the intensive case management with flexible funds component, but we also are going to build a separate component, which is just rent assistance. The variance of this program and its design right now is that agencies that would be funded to do the rental assistance would all referrals from the case managers that are assigned to provide case management with flexible funds. So they might be working with the family, and after a long discussion with the family and working with them a little bit, they might realize, you know what? They really would be okay if just the rent was paid. And so then they would be referred to an organization that would just pay rent assistance. So why is this important to understand? We imagine we will contract with 15 organizations that will provide case management and flexible funds. We will contract with 1 or 2 organizations that will have a more administrative function of essentially working with landlords to cut rent checks. So we're going to have 2 kind of areas in this program. No agency could be funded for both of those areas. So there will be kind of 2 opportunities in this RFP. So for a lot of organizations that have been doing the work under EPRAP, they are used to working with landlords. I apologize. They're used to working with landlords. They enjoy working with landlords. They like doing the rent assistance component alone. And it might be a good fit for them because they don't necessarily have an expertise in case management or development of case managers. Excuse me. So there is an opportunity for that in this program too. And you'll see that identified in the RFP. That is all the result of data. Case management. We're going to continue to support case managers in the high levels that we did before. The ways that we did that was that we offered the monthly learning circles. We offer 3 drop-in opportunities per week for case managers to drop in with our team, to work with each other, to share resources. It's really a great process of ensuring that everybody is working in a coordinated way. We certainly hope that we'll be able to work in person again in the very near future. A couple of changes that will happen on the case manager side is that case managers will be required to provide evidence that they have communicated with every household that they have enrolled from the beginning. So what we learned through EPRAP and through the COVID challenges with rent is that a lot of households lost their jobs. They were part of youth and family homelessness prevention, but they no longer knew who their case manager was or how to make that connection. So we want to fix that in this next iteration where we'll be requiring a proof of monthly communication. Could be an email, could be a phone call, but we'll be requiring proof of monthly communication. It's also, if you're doing that once a month, it's going to be a lot easier to identify when a household's, their email is no longer valid. So you can place that phone call to them and say, hey, do you have a new email? Or, you try to reach them by phone, you can't reach them, you send that email, but a year or 2 down the road, it's a lot harder to find people and make sure that they have that connection. We also want our households to know that they are connected to us forever. So that's really important for households that experience instability somewhere else down the road. So a couple of changes with that. The other changes that we were giving data to our agencies annually. We'll be providing them with feedback and how well they're doing, either quarterly or every 6 months. So we're going to expand on that. So I think I've talked a little bit already about the fact that we're going to develop a rental assistance only program. Another change that we are looking at and proposing to leadership and will hopefully be realized through the RFP process is that we had an awful lot of staff turnover. We had a total of 83 case managers over the course of YFHPI where we should have had 25. So with the very high levels of staff turnover, we took a look at the wages paid across the board, and there was a lot of diversity in the wages that were paid. Agencies that paid higher wages to the case manager had longer term case manager retention. So we are going to support increased wages for all case managers in this program. That will be an active component of this RFP. That'll mean that contracts will be different for all agencies. Again, in the first slide, we had 50-50 split. All agencies got 150,000, 75 went to case management, 75 went to financial assistance for the households. That's going away. So now all contracts will be negotiated separately. They'll be based on actual costs to operate the program with an expectation that case managers will be paid a good wage. So that is different. The biggest impact of that change of paying people better, which I think we can all agree is a good thing to do. The biggest impact is that we will have fewer contracts because of this. I think it's okay though. I think we need to pay people better. In all reality, we had only 3 case managers out of 25 case managers that were paid at a rate that kept them from being rent burdened themselves. Only 3. So it requires a lot, $26 an hour to be able to afford a 2-bedroom apartment as a case manager. So it's really hard for a case manager to provide housing stability supports to people that are sitting across from them that make more money than them often on an hourly rate. And it's really hard to support people with housing stability when you're unstable yourself. So recognizing all of this, seeing the data, we are going to make this change. Another thing that we recognized was we were a go first strategy back in 2016. We actually were launched first as the first strategy of Best Starts for Kids. But Best Starts for Kids has all these other amazing supports. So this time around, our case managers will be very deeply embedded in all of the programming that's available through Best Starts for Kids. It's only going to serve all of our households better. That's another change. And again, no guaranteed contracting this time around. We're going to make sure that, agencies support their staff well, that they retain and keep their case managers, that agencies are performing well, that households aren't becoming homeless, and we'll reevaluate midterm, mid-levy to see, is this an opportunity for us to bring in some new partners that may have new commitments to this work, or will we continue to support the programs that we're currently supporting? But we will leave that open in this iteration of YFHPI, where we really did plan to support our agencies in perpetuity in YFHPI 1.0. We will work to sustain the gains. I've given a lot of information. Let me share with you once again, this was a very successful program. So we're going to continue on the gains. We're going to continue to support case managers. We're going to continue to provide lots of opportunities for them to work together. We will continue to offer individualized support to case managers upon demand whenever they need it. We are here for them. We will continue to use data and have a database system where you will track all data, and we will continue to use data to drive us towards improvement. Here is the timeline, the anticipated timeline for the release of the RFP. We will release the RFP on February 28th. So that'll be, announced broadly. Look on your BSK blog, make sure you're connected to that BSK blog. The currently funded partners will certainly be aware of this, and we will send out the information as broadly as we can. You found out about this today. If you found out through this because you're connected to something, you'll find out about the RFP through that as well. We will offer 2 information sessions that will be very similar to this information session. The last day to submit questions, you are always afforded the opportunity to submit questions about the RFP, and the last date of that will be March 18th. We anticipate that the applications will be due March 25th. We will have evaluation teams reviewing applications April 6th through April 26th. We received 64 applications the first time around. We anticipate a lot of interest in this program again in iteration 2.0. So it'll take us a while to review those applications and rate them. We will notify selected and non-selected applicants on or around May 2nd. And we anticipate that contracts will start July 1st. I'm impressed that I have done this with 5 minutes to spare. And so if you have questions, I am happy to answer questions for you. Somebody's got a question. Bree.
Hey, Kim. I'll turn on my video for you. Two super quick questions. First one is, what's the total available for this award? And then second question would be, do you have an estimate of what you're kind of thinking in terms of contract amounts? Or I know you mentioned about 15 folks you were thinking.
So we are thinking that we'll be able to fund approximately 15 organizations with this. Let me give you an estimate. Let me open something up. We do actually know exactly how much we've been awarded. That's been publicized. We get the first flush of all of the levy revenue. And so it's we absolutely have a confirmed amount that we're awarded each year. And so the total budget for the first year is 4.5 million. And that is not only for all the contracts, it's also for King County staff. So it's global, it's for our admin staff as well. So roughly we have 3.997 million. Actually, I'm going to put this. I'm going to show what the actual budget is for each of these years. Let's see if I can put it in the chat. That just pop up in the chat for you all. Oh, no, let me try again. Okay. That is your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's how much we have every year for contracting. So you'll see it increases every year. Wild guess. Why do you think it's increasing every year? So we want you to pay your case managers more every year. We want people to be paid well. So we've built adjustments in every single year to ensure that all staff are paid well in this program. Left a little room for inflation. Can you imagine getting a contract for 5 years? It was the same exact amount all 5 years. No room for inflation, no room to raise salaries, really a challenge. So we have fixed that this time. Other questions?
Thanks, Kim.
Welcome, Bree.
Kim, I might have missed this. Do organizations have to apply every year, or is it just for the 5 years, just one application?
You'll have to apply for the first year, and just in full transparency, this year it'll be a 6-month contract, which is really weird. But we have to contract according to King County's budget now, which we didn't have to do before. So the first contract will be July 1st through the end of the year. We automatically are assuming that we will renew January 1st, 2023 for an additional 2 years. So the first contract should be about 2.5 years. Then we reserve the right to go out and re-RFP if we need to fill gaps for agencies that maybe are not performing as well, or they realize this was not a good fit. In the first iteration, we contracted with 27 contractors. I have a really pretty clock behind me that's going to play a song for you all now. I apologize for that as well. So two, right off the bat, realizing we're in a good fit for the program. So we want to reserve the right to re-RFP mid-levy.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. What is the minimum and maximum that most agencies usually request in the RFPs? Good question, Simona. We're going to give you some guidance in the RFP itself. The RFP right now is 29 pages long. It has an awful lot of guidance for you in there, but we will never tell an agency what it costs you to deliver your own services. Now I see there are some questions in here. Is there a matrix of homelessness prevention strategies and a point system of how effective each of those prevention strategies is based on your data? You could Google best starts for kids, youth and family homelessness prevention. There's an awful lot of data out there right now. And that may answer your questions, but we will have benchmarks identified. We're not going to surprise people. So we're not going to say, oh, you underperformed, and you're not going to know what that metric was. And we have no intention to be a punitive program. We want everybody to succeed and thrive in this program. But there will be certain metrics. I think one of the metrics would be, you know, again, we had some agencies that incurred a tremendous amount of staff turnover. And so that may be one of our metrics going forward. That's just so detrimental to the overall well-being of the households that are being served. So there will be some things that people will organically know is a part of their ability to be refunded, but for the most part, there will be no surprises. Agencies will know really clearly what those benchmarks are. Do those yearly contract budgets include the flexible assistance as well? Yes. So the flexible assistance will be a prescribed amount. So you won't be able to say we would like to have $80,000 or $250,000 in flexible funds. Flexible funds will be across the board. So I think our early estimates are that the flexible funds will maintain the level they were at in order to allow us to budget well for this program. And what we have built in there right now is $75,000 per agency for flexible funds. Will the RFP allow for subcontracting or applications submitted in partnership? We don't say no to anything up front, so we're not saying you can't subcontract. But historically, that would probably not work well, Emily. So you'll have to really explain to us why that would be the best model, because again, we're going to work really closely with one case manager. So we won't work with two case managers from your organization or four case managers. We're going to work with one person who's going to be really well trained in this model. So we just have to hear more about that. We're pretty open to anything that makes a lot of sense and is really going to serve the community. We're going to be pretty open to. All right, out of respect for everybody's time, we are at the end. I'm going to stay here for a few minutes. I'm going to stop the recording. I'm going to stay here for a few minutes. And if you want to send me more questions, I'll be here. Keyshawn has dropped in too. So Keyshawn, thank you for joining us. And you may have been here the whole time. I'm just now seeing this, but she will stay here too with us to answer any questions you might have of her as well. So essentially, I'm stopping the recording right now. Thank you for your investment of time. We look forward to receiving lots and lots of interest and RFPs from you. And there will be a lot of support for you throughout the process. So you won't be blindsided at any point. There'll be lots of opportunities for you to get support. Thank you so much.